Dutchman!
For nearly 5 decades, Netherlands-based ride manufacturer Vekoma have prioritized innovation. They are responsible for some of the first-of-their-kind models of roller coasters, although not all of their efforts have been well received. The SLC model likely came to mind for many of you watching this, but the company's innovation continued into the 2000s with the Flying Dutchman model, the world's first flying coaster. The original Flying Dutchman prototype would come to be known as Stealth, located at what was then Paramount's Great America. Vekoma designed the Flying Dutchman in cooperation with Paramount, meaning that the coaster model could only be built at Paramount's parks. With its striking red and white color scheme, Stealth instantly became a fan favorite after opening in 2000. Riders were seated 4 across in an odd combination of restraints, a lap bar, shin guards, and an over-the-shoulder vest-style restraint. The trains were then lowered to lie parallel with the track, and riders would lie on their backs as they exited the station and began their ascent up the lift hill. After cresting the hill, the flight began as the track rotated, putting the riders in the flying position. Stealth's layout mostly consisted of sweeping turns for riders to fly through, but it also contained a loop that riders would traverse on their backs, a disorienting feeling for those accustomed to normal loops. Stealth ended its layout with an intense double corkscrew, after which riders would find themselves on their backs until the trains rose again. Despite its popularity, Stealth suffered from numerous mechanical issues and downtime, so much so that Paramount terminated their exclusivity deal with Vekoma. The gates were open for any park to get a Flying Dutchman, and that's exactly what happened. Six Flags took notice of Stealth, and the following year added 2 Flying Dutchman coasters to their parks. X-Flight opened at Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, better known as Geauga Lake, in May of 2001. The layout from Stealth was largely unchanged, save for an additional helix at the end. Less than a month later, Batwing opened at Six Flags America, featuring the exact same layout as X-Flight. Reception for these coasters was once again mostly positive. Strangely, no other Flying Dutchman coasters were made after Batwing, and 2 of the 3 existing coasters would not stay in the same place for long. Due to its constant mechanical issues, Stealth would only operate at Paramount's Great America for 3 years, closing in 2003 to make way for a water park expansion. Fortunately, the coaster was not scrapped, but was instead relocated to Paramount's Carowinds. It reopened with a Star Trek theme, now named Borg Assimilator, and a new black and green color scheme. Borg Assimilator would remain unchanged until Cedar Fair purchased Paramount Parks in 2007. Upon losing the Star Trek license, the coaster was again renamed, this time to Nighthawk, and painted blue and yellow. This is how the coaster remains today, and it continues to operate. X-Flight at Geauga Lake was removed in 2006, 1 year before the park would close forever, and relocated to Kings Island. There it was painted red and renamed Firehawk, where it would continue to operate until 2018, when it was demolished to make way for Orion, a B&M Giga coaster. All this time, only 1 Flying Dutchman has remained in its original place of operation, Batwing at Six Flags America, and it has operated sporadically. Recently, it was down for the first half of the 2019 season before reopening in late July. Despite being open once again, the problems these models are experiencing lead many to believe we are in the last few years of the Flying Dutchman. Now that only 2 of these coasters still exist, we can begin to speculate on how much longer they'll be around. It's common knowledge among enthusiasts that Vekoma stopped producing parts for the Flying Dutchman years ago, leading to rising maintenance costs. Firehawk's trains were recently spotted at Carowinds, likely to be used as parts donors for Nighthawk. However, Six Flags doesn't have something like Firehawk to draw parts from, meaning that all of their maintenance on Batwing has to be done in-house. Despite the high operational costs both remaining coasters likely have, there is more evidence to suggest that Batwing might be staying around longer than Nighthawk. Batwing was actually repainted in 2013 and still looks excellent, and it received a new updated train a few years ago as well. This might suggest that Six Flags plans to get at least a few more years of operation out of the coaster. Nighthawk, however, is harder to guess on. Using Firehawk's trains as parts donors might at first suggest that Cedar Fair wants to keep the coaster open, but they may also just be trying to avoid any major malfunctions until they finally decide to close it. Remember, Cedar Fair is looking into closing coasters at their parks that aren't popular enough to continue operating, and that's one of the reasons we just lost Vortex at Kings Island. Nighthawk could very well be Carowinds' next coaster to close. Only time will tell, but I think it's safe to say we're at least in the final decade of the Vekoma Flying Dutchman. Whether you love it or hate it, Vekoma definitely tried something new with the Flying Dutchman, something that B&M have since perfected with their own flying coasters. Vekoma took another shot at a flying coaster in 2009 with their Stingray model, a much more compact take on the flying coaster. Only one was ever built at Giant Wheel Park in China, and it was closed in 2018. As of 2019, Nighthawk and Batwing are still operating, but for how much longer? Parts are becoming scarce, and many riders complain of rough and uncomfortable rides, especially on Nighthawk. It's sadly only a matter of time before the Vekoma Flying Dutchman becomes an extinct part of roller coaster history. Until then, however, the two remaining Dutchmen will continue flying through the skies at Carowinds and Six Flags America.